Welcome to Tech Brothers. In this video we're going to learn a special scenario, and special scenario is how to set up always on availability group when SQL Server instances are installed in cluster mode. The reason it is a special scenario is because when it comes to always on availability group, the best practice is that you install SQL Server instances in standalone mode, not in cluster mode. And but this special scenario is given to me by a friend, and he wanted me to go through some testing and see if it is possible. And we run into a lot of errors when we set up availability group, and I have put together those error list right here. No need to basically read it right now because we're going to go through each error and reproduce that error and set up our availability group on SQL Server instances that are running in cluster mode. And I'm going to go ahead and upload these error list on our blog too, so that you can later on you can go ahead and take a look on different errors that you might run into when you are going through this particular scenario. So let me give you an overview of our cluster. Right here is my cluster. As you can see, SQL Prod is one instance of SQL Server, and SQL UAT is another instance of SQL Server. Both are installed in cluster mode, and I have two node cluster, node 1, node 2. One thing I do wanted to mention, that as you can see that both SQL Server instances are running on one node, and obviously when we install SQL Server in cluster mode, our main intention is that they should be highly available. So when node 1 goes down, all the SQL Server instances that are running on node 1 should go to node 2, and because that is the failover that we defined, and run on that particular node. In this case, that is the same scenario. They are both running on one node, but let's see that what it impacts when it comes to availability group when both SQL Server instances are running on one node, because you are going to run into this situation if you have cluster that and SQL Server's instances that are running in cluster mode. So I'm gonna go ahead and fire up SQL Server Management Studio and try to create availability group between these two SQL Server instances. SQL Server Prod is going to be my primary SQL Server where I want to create availability group. Click connect, and here is always on high availability group. I have already configured both of these instances so that I can go ahead and take advantage of always on high availability group. And you do need to configure in SQL Server Configuration Manager and define that what cluster, because that is must for always on availability, what cluster these SQL Server instances are going to use in order to successfully create always on high availability. So right now I don't have any availability group. Let's go ahead and try to create a new high availability group. So we're going to go ahead and use the wizard. You can click do not show this message right here. Click next and give it a name. So in my case, I'm going to go ahead and give a name, AG test SQL cluster mode. What it says that we're testing availability group and when SQL Server instances are in cluster mode. Click next. I have one database that meets the requirement prerequisites, so I'm going to select that. Click next, and here is where I want to add the other replicas that I want this availability group to go to. So click on add replica, and other replica in my case is going to be UAT, and click connect. And right here is our first error that is saying that both SQL Server instances are running on one node. As the name suggests, availability group, it is not going to be high available, because if node 1 goes down, our availability group has nowhere basically to fail over to. So that is our first error right here. That's the error, our first error. So in order to resolve this error, I'm going to go ahead and click OK, cancel this one too, and fail my node SQL Server instance UAT to another node. So it's going to take a minute or two to fail over to node 2. Alright, so SQL UAT is up on other node. We shouldn't get this error, so we're gonna go ahead and try to create availability group again. Sorry about that. Click next, and here is the database that I want to select. Next, add replica and connect to UAT. It should not give us that error. As you can see, it let us add that secondary replica. So I'm gonna go ahead and make this readable secondary. Right here is very important warning. Right here it says that this is failover cluster instance. Failover cluster instance do not support always on automatic failover. As you can see right here, the automatic failover is grayed out. So every time when something happens and you need to fail over your availability group, you have to do it manually when your SQL Server instances are installed in cluster mode. So that is right here. Important warning, and I wanted to mention that this is very important. So let's go ahead and I'm going to keep endpoint backup references just same default, and I'm not going to go ahead and create a listener because there are other stuff that we need to take care that's more important. Once the availability group is set up, it's not difficult to create a listener. So I'm going to go ahead and click next, and this is the shared where it's going to take this is the default. What full means that it's going to go ahead and take the backup of this database and restore it on our secondary replica, and this is the shared location where it's going to store the backup, and then other secondary replica is going to come and grab that file and restore it. Keep in mind, one best practice is that if you wanted to create this shared location, create it where it doesn't reside on any of the node that is part of our availability group. Otherwise, we will have a single point of failure. So I'm going to keep it. This is not part of my cluster right here, this machine name. So I created a shared right here, TBS cluster. It was already created, so I just grabbed it. So you can create another share and put that there. Click next. Alright, we got the errors right here, validation errors. Let's take a look on the first error. It says the database sales order and screen already exists in SQL Server instance that hosts the secondary replica. That's okay, we will delete that. And let's take a look on the second error right here. It says the following folder location do not exist. And if you take a look on the second error right here, I have put that here. What it's doing is it's when you are basically creating via wizard right here, it takes the backup and restore it with the default location of the files that our database that we selected. And in when it's in cluster mode, obviously those disks are not going to be the same, and they are different disks. And when it try to restore the database, though that up here, this right here, it's the location right here becomes invalid, and it cannot restore it from there. And obviously, since it is in cluster mode, we cannot create. Usually what happens is if we get into this error when SQL Server instances are installed in standalone mode, we usually do get this error. What we do is basically go ahead and create that folder and our drives are basically the same, but in cluster mode drives are mostly not the same, and we will not be able to create L backslash. If you take a look on my let me show you right here. Right now is F, T and L that is resided, and these disks are used by one SQL Server instance right here, and they are on node 1 and they are not available on node 2. So how do we take care of this error? We're gonna go ahead and click OK and leave that here. Let's go ahead and connect with our SQL Server UAT, and let's take a look right here. This is our database that it was complaining that it's already there. So we're gonna go ahead and restore the database, bring it online and delete it. The reason I need to bring it online, because if you try to delete the database that is in restoring mode, you will get an error that you cannot do that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this database. Now we shouldn't get that error in validation if we revalidate, but we should still get the error that it cannot find the files, the location. As you can see that the first error we got, that database already exists, that is taken care of, but the second error that we had, that it cannot find the file locations, that is still there. In order to basically resolve this issue, what we're going to do is initialize. If you have ever done mirroring, in mirroring we have two options, either to let Wizard initialize our database, or we can go ahead and take the backup of our existing database and initialize our database for mirroring on our own. So this is basically availability group is a combination of mirroring and replication. So it does that, it goes through the mirroring process. So if we go ahead and basically initialize our database, then it is going to ignore this part. All we need to do is go ahead and join the database that is already initialized. This is part of initializing, this error right here. So if it is not initialized, if it is already initialized, then it will, we have a choice to skip this whole thing and just tell it that go ahead and join it, because we know that our database is up to date and it is in a right state to join. So let's go ahead and leave that here, and we're going to go ahead and restore the database on our secondary. So let's go ahead and restore the database. I do have a backup right here, and I put it in a location where I could access from SQL prod instance, node 1 and node 2. So here's my SQL sales backup. I'm gonna go ahead and select that. Alright, and I'm gonna go ahead and say right here that relocate all these files. This is the resolution. As you can see, that is trying to restore on F and L. I don't want that, because on my target is S and R. For MDF is S, for LDF it's R. So I'm gonna go ahead and click relocate the files, and it changed right here, and click OK. As you can see, our database already restored. So let's go ahead and go to our availability group wizard. Let's go to previous, and what this time we didn't want it to go ahead and initialize, we want it to join now. So join means that we have initialized our database, so go ahead and just join. So let's go ahead and click join now, join only, click next. As you can see that the validation part is taken care of right now. This warning right here is that we're not creating listener, and we'll create the listener separately, but we are through with the validation. So click next. This is just the summary that is telling you that it's going to go ahead and create availability group named AG_test SQL cluster mode and all other good stuff. Click finish and click on more detail so that we would know that what is going through. And as you can see that we got an error. Let's take a look on error. It says fail to create join add replica to availability group because TBS node is a possible owner. TBS node 1 is a possible owner for both replicas. So obviously we have a 2-node cluster, we have a SQL Server installed in cluster mode, and both of those nodes needs to be possible owners so that we can fail over, and that is by default, by design, when it comes to installing SQL Server or any other application, cluster-aware application, and we wanted to take advantage of Windows cluster. So this is by design, but it is complaining about that you know, the SQL Server instance SQL prod and SQL Server instance SQL UAT, node 1 and node 2 are possible owner of both of these SQL Server instances, so it cannot create availability group. So let me show you right here. After passing AG validation, this is the error we get. So let's go ahead and see that how we can take care of this error. Click OK and go back to our cluster right here. This is our cluster, this is our SQL Server instance prod, and if you take a look on SQL Server instance right here, right click on that, go to properties and go to advanced policies. You will see right here is that the possible owners right here, as you can see right here. SQL prod is possible owner. Usually by default, this is from my previous demo when I was testing all that. Usually it's like this. So you can take the node 2 out and hit apply and click OK. And now let's go ahead on node 2. Sorry. Let me go ahead and close this and open our failover cluster again. This is our failover cluster, and when we go to the roles, let's click on SQL UAT and go to the resources. Right here is our SQL Server engine. Go to the properties and go to the advanced. And as you can see that possible owners are TBS node 1 and TBS node 2. Right now it's running on node 2, so we will not be able to change that these both cannot be the possible owner, because right now TBS node 2 owns this role, so we cannot take this off. So we can take node 1 off. Let's go ahead and apply. Okay. So now at least we shouldn't get this message that they are possible owners. Let's go back and click on finish and see if we get that message. Alright, we are through with the availability group AG to come online and everything. We are it is online. However, joining failed right here. Let's take a look on the error. It says the database sales new is not in a recovery mode. So if you remember, in mirroring, the SQL Server database needs to be in recovery mode in order for us to have a successful mirroring. So let's go ahead and click OK, and let me show you right here. This is the fourth error that we're going to we have reproduced, and we're going to take care. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave that just like this. Go back to my SQL Server instance. Right here is UAT. I'm gonna restore this database again because I do have the backup already. So I'm gonna go ahead and restore my database in non-recovery mode, because this is what it's complaining about. So I'm going to go ahead and click on restore database from device, get the same backup because I know that I have not made any changes. So backup reside at, in my case, it's a central location. This is my backup. It's selected. Go file, relocate the files, and on option up here in options we will restore it as no recovery. Keep in mind that I'm intentionally going through all these steps. So click OK. As you can see that it is in restore mode. So in mirroring, the database has to be in restore mode. In order for our mirroring to be successful, this is exactly the same way because it's a combination of mirroring and replication. But during setup, during initialization, it goes through the mirroring part, and then after that it goes through the replication part for functionality purposes. So let's go ahead and go back, close this. We're gonna go ahead and delete this, quickly recreate again. Select the database, add the secondary replica, make it readable for other applications. Click next, join. We're good with that. Finish. Now, since our database is in restore mode, it shouldn't really complain about the database being in restore mode. But we have an error again. Let's take a look on error. Well, now it's complaining about that no transactional backup was restored on this database. Remember, first it complained about that it just needs to be in restore mode, but now it's complaining about that usually in mirroring we take the full backup or full backup, differential backup, and the log backup, transactional log backup. Basically you don't need transactional log backup when you have differential, but anyway, so in mirroring we do the transactional log backup in no recovery mode, and that's how we set it up. And this is exactly what he's complaining about, that yes, database is in restore mode, but it is not in a right state where I want it to be. So in order to take care of this one, we'll go ahead and click OK, click close. Keep in mind our availability group is created, but it is not joined. There's no secondary replica for this availability group. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and restore this database, and then we're going to go ahead and restore this database with the transactional log backup that I have already taken. Keep in mind, when I'm doing all this, I have taken the transactional log backup and there was no transaction made after that. So if you have a scenario where I'm gonna go ahead and delete this, when you're doing it on production, transactions are happening, so you need to take the latest transaction and restore that. And let's go ahead and restore this, restore our database right here with the transactional log backup. So right here is my full backup. I'm gonna go ahead and click OK. I'm sorry, I needed to add the transactional log backup. Alright, full backup, click add, and here's my transaction log backup. Click OK. It selected full backup and transaction log backup. Click on files, relocate all the files, and click on option, and we're gonna go ahead and do no recovery, and we're gonna go ahead and restore this. And then after that, we're going to add our replica into our existing availability group and see if we're successful. Alright, it's successful. As you can see, the sales order underscore new is in restore mode. So we're going to go ahead and click on availability group. Keep in mind that this availability group was created, but there was no secondary replica in it. So we're going to go ahead and add a replica. And this is our secondary replica. We're going to go ahead and click connect. As you can see that it is connected. Click next. Hang on a second, I think that we need to add that, and right here our database. Remove database from availability group. This is first we need to do. We're going to go ahead and remove it and add the database again. Click next, and this is our database. You can remove the whole availability group and recreate it again. I'm just trying to save some time. Join only. Connect, next, and as you can see that it went through the validation fine, and right here is our sales orders. Let's go ahead and click finish and see if everything goes fine. As you can see, it joining is successful this time. Click close and refresh our secondary databases to see that if it's in sync. As you can see that it is synchronizing. Before that it was not synchronizing. So our availability group is all set, but keep in mind that in order to set this availability group, we have gone through these errors and we have gone through the resolution of these errors. Don't consider this a success, because in next video I'm going to what we did on our cluster. It seems like that if we make availability group happy, our cluster is not happy. If we make cluster happy, availability group is not happy. But I'm going to go through all those tests and share with you in my next video, and I hope this helps.